young once. I know it's hard to believe. And I used to think that I knew everything. Anybody who's got teenage children will know exactly what I mean. I used to think my father knew nothing. He was really old. He was like 50. So what did he know? When I started working, I used to get paid in cash. It was so long ago, we didn't really all have bank accounts. So every week, they'd come out with a bag of money. At the end of the month, I didn't have any left. So I asked my father why this was. He thought for a while and he said, "You spent it." You know, he was right. I saw things in shops and I bought them. He told me to buy a notebook and to write down everything I spent so I could perform some analysis at the end of the month. This was very sound advice. I knew exactly where all my money was going. After a while, I found I actually had money in my bank account. This was a good thing. I decided I wanted to buy a camera. It was a good camera. It's called a Nikon F2 Photomic A. That's a big long term. It was a professional camera. It was a very good camera. It was second hand, and it still cost me a month's pay. So I asked my father for some advice. Now, he had a good camera. He had one of them German cameras. So I knew he'd spent a lot of money for it. So I knew he'd give me good advice. He thought about it. He asked me, "Do you want it?" "Yes." "Can you afford it?" "Yes." "Well, buy it." This was good advice. No, it really was. I bought the camera and I've used it for over 30 years. If I had children, I could hand it down to my children and they could probably use it for 30 years. If I had children. I needed a car to get to work, so I asked my father, "Father, should I buy a Porsche?" He thought. He asked me, "Do you want it?" "Yes." "Can you afford it?" "No." So he told me not to buy it. And this was very sound advice, possibly the best advice I ever gave. I was working and I was offered a new job at a small startup company. It was a good opportunity. It was good money. It was very challenging work. But I liked where I was working already. I was working on a project that we were working on for about 3 or 4 years. We were replacing all of our software with all new software. I actually enjoyed going to work each day. So I asked my father for some advice. He thought about it. "Do you like where you're working now?" "Well, yes, I do." "The grass is always greener on the other side." I stayed where I was because I enjoyed the job. Yeah, the job didn't turn out to be quite as good as it had been. The green grass turned brown and died. And in the end, I just quit the job and went to work somewhere else. So maybe that wasn't great advice that my father had given me. But then, he was from that older generation where you started a job and you stayed there for the whole of your working career. The last time I asked my father's advice was 8 years ago. I remember the day very well. It was the 29th of February. Now all the girls in the audience will know that's a very special day. My girlfriend said something to me. Yeah, it was the question that every man dreads. let's get married. Right. I'd always had this romantic vision of a marriage proposal. You know, nice dinner, candlelight, a ring. There was none of that. We were in the car park of the hospice. I was going to visit my father for possibly the last time. My mind was not on romance. My mind was not on long-term plans. I don't know where my mind was. I was going to ask my father for advice, but then I remembered a story my mother told me about his marriage proposal. He took my mother for a picnic out in the desert. They sat on a war memorial. It was in North Africa. And he asked her how much money she had. You might call that mercenary, but I call it financially prudent. He checked that she had as much money as he had before he asked. Maybe I should have asked for some good advice, but yet, as my father was whacked out on morphine at the time, I didn't think I'd get any. So yes, I remained single. And sometimes I wonder, did I make the right decision? You see, in my life, I've had some good lessons. Sometimes I've received good advice. Sometimes I've received lousy advice. And sometimes I haven't asked for advice when maybe I should have done. But now, I'm really old. I think I have the experience to give you some advice. If you have a question or a problem, everybody nowadays, they just Google it. You get opinions, good, bad, or indifferent. And you're stuck with a decision. I think you should ask. Find someone you trust. Find someone with experience. Maybe the question is not important. Maybe it's the asking